Peace to the 12, man. I made a community post that this was coming out. Here it go. So y'all see the title. This man wrote about black Jews in the 1800s, right? This man wrote about black Jews in the 1800s. It actually might have been in the 1900s. But he was born in 1872, so I don't know when he wrote it. But anyway, this guy right here on the screen, his name is author Talmudic Abumethi. He was a writer, theologian, and a poet. And he pastored in several churches and contributed articles, poems, newspapers around the United States. He was named by Governor R. Greg Cherry as the first North Carolina poet in 1948, and all that. Also, where's this man's lips at? Like kind of like a turtle mouth. But anyway, so yeah, we're gonna get into this book that he wrote, which is called The Jew, a Negro by author Talmudic Abernathy. Right, this is going to be like 83 slides, and basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to read what he has written, and I'm going to also substantiate that with other books that I have, and I'm going to go into the scriptures, and that'll be the video. So we're going to start with the preface on page, or preface, however you say it, page 11. And he says, where are we at? They have dwelt in their native originality and simplicity of custom, habits, etc., since the days when Ethiopians first governed imperial Egypt. So this guy already lets you know that he knows that the original Egyptians were so-called black people. He's going to let you know that in this video too, which I've already done videos on that too. But matter of fact, I tell you this all the time. I'm going to say it again. The current inhabitants, the current Arab inhabitants of Egypt, they invaded Byzantine Egypt in 640 AD. Right, I've mentioned this before, but anyway, let's go to the highlighted portion. He says the effort of the author is to prove herein by evidence from history showing the intermingling of the Jewish race with those of other races, and these in turn with still other races together, forming a miscellaneous intermingling of racial affinities. That the Jew of today, as well as his ancestors in other times, is the kinsman and descendant of the Negro, holding the Negro's features and characteristics through the long years of racial transmutations, and I might add, in spite of the Jewish intermarriages into other races, which fact is so thoroughly established by history. So he tells you right there, the kinsman and the descendant, the Jew today goes back to the Negro, right? And let's break this down in parts. He said, since the days when Ethiopians first governed imperial Egypt, yeah, like I said all the time, Egypt was inhabited by so-called black people, ancient Egyptians. You know, it's crazy that this is even a controversial statement, because when you look into people of old, they pretty much unanimously all said it. It was only until about mid 1800s where that became a differentiating opinion, especially in the sense that now you have a whole bunch of Egyptologists who are like, oh, well, you know, nah, what we used to believe was all a lie, you know. But anyway, it's all a cover-up. And that's pertaining to Psalms 83. And why do I say it's cover-up pertaining to Psalms 83? Because, like it tells you in Psalms 83, our enemies are in agreement to cut us off from being a nation. Because if you find out who the ancient Egyptians are, then you find out who the Israelites are, because the Israelites were mistaken for Egyptians multiple times in the Bible. So whatever color the Egyptians were, that means that's the color that the Hebrews were, right? And you have to keep that lie going that they look like this guy, and in reality, they look like this guy. But anyway, continuing on, let's go here. The Ethiopians governed imperial Egypt. Yeah, let's look at another book I got by Jean-François Champollion. He was a French historian, linguist, who founded scientific Egyptology and deciphered hieroglyphics. He was born in 1790. And for those of you that don't know, this guy, Jean-François Champollion, he is known as the father of Egyptology. That's what he's known as. Let's see what he had to say. Let's see what Jean-François Champollion had to say as being known as the father of Egyptology in his book, Lettres écrites d'Egypte et de Nubie. Right? It's written in French, but I translated it. It translates to Letters Written of Egypt and Nubia in 1828 and 1829 by Champollion Young, new edition. Right? And we're going to just translate what he said. Right? You got all this. This is all written in French, right? And this is me translating it. Appendix summary, notice on the history of Egypt, written in Alexandria for the Viceroy and delivered to His Highness in November 1829. And then we're going to go to this part right here. Let's see what it says. This is from French to English. This is what he says about Egypt. Pay attention. The first tribes who populated Egypt, that is to say, the valley of the Nile between the cataract of Aswan and the sea, came from Abyssinia or Sinar, but it is impossible to fix the time of the first migration, which is extremely ancient. So he says the first Egyptians came from Abyssinia. What is Abyssinia? Abyssinia is just an old word for Ethiopia, right? Abyssinia, the Ethiopian Empire, historically known as Abyssinia or simply Ethiopia. So keep that in mind. He said the first tribes who populated Egypt came from Abyssinia. Abyssinia is what? Ethiopia. But it's impossible to fix the time of this first migration, which is extremely ancient. The ancient Egyptians belonged to a race of men quite similar to the Kenis or barbarous current inhabitants of Nubia. We do not find among the Copts of Egypt, any of the characteristic features of the ancient Egyptian population. So he's letting you know that the modern inhabitants that during his time do not look like the ancient Egyptian population. That's because they weren't the ancient Egyptian population. But anyway, he says the Copts are the result of the confused mixture of all the nations which successfully dominated Egypt. It is wrong to want to find among them the main traits of the old race, right? And I did a video on this called Father of Egyptology said the Egyptians were black, which I just kind of proved that right there. But you can also just go to my page, click this little search bar, and type in the word Egypt. You can see my Egyptian videos that I've done. But anyway, let's go to the other part that was highlighted in the first page, page 11, which is this part right here. He says in this book, The Jew and Negro, back to the beginning of the book, the first book I used, he says that the Jew of today, as well as his ancestors in other times, is the kinsman and descendant of the Negro, holding the Negro's features and characteristics through the long years of racial transmutations. And I might add, in spite of the Jewish intermarriages into other races, which fact is so thoroughly established by history. So, another guy who mentioned the Negro characteristics of the Jews is a guy by the name of Harry Johnston, who was born in 1858. He was a British explorer, botanist, artist, colonial administrator, linguist, traveled widely across Africa. And he wrote a book called The Negro in the New World by Sir Harry H. Johnston. We're going to go to page 27 of this, as you see right here. He says, the Elamites of Mesopotamia appear to have been a Negroid people with kinky hair and to have been transmitted this racial type to the Jews and Syrians. There is a curliness of the hair together with a Negro eye and full lips in the portraiture of Assyria, which conveys the idea of an evident Negro element in Babylonia. Yeah, the ancient Babylonians were so-called black people too. I got to do a video on Babylon. But then we're going to go down to this part right here that I have highlighted at the bottom, this little subtext. And it says, still same page, which was 27. It says, the Jews are composed of 3 or 4 separate racial elements. The Asiatic Negroid strain shows itself occasionally in the curly hair, the long iron proportions of the skull, the Jewish hybrids with the Negro in Jamaica and Guyana reproduce most strikingly the Assyrian type. All right. I also get on here where he touches on Arabia. He says, it is quite conceivable that the great peninsula of Arabia was once populated as far as its natural conditions allow by a primitive Negro stock, right? Which may have been later or partially exterminated by changing and unfavorable conditions of climate and by the aftercoming of the white man and his types. Well, yeah, what you know as the Middle East today, or at least the portion of Arabia, it was inhabited by so-called blacks. As a matter of fact, when you read the scriptures, it tells you about Nimrod, who was Ethiopian. He went into what they now call the Middle East region. All right, and he brought Ethiopians along there. We know what they settled in there. But that's a whole other video for another day. I actually did a video on that. I think when I touched on my Buddha video. I don't remember. It was on one of them videos. But I'm sure it'll get its own video at another time. But anyway, so this guy also said that. And then we also have another witness that talks about the blackness of the so-called Jews, where we go to this right here, World Geography, Ancient History Works, publication date 1600. So this book goes all the way back to the 1600s. It's called Early Modern World Geography, right? We're going to see what it says, right? A geographical description of 4 parts of the world taken from notes and works by Monsieur Samson, right? We're going to go to page 20, highlighted portion. He says, the people which anciently possessed this country were the Jews, being of a middle stature, strong of body, of a black complexion, goggle-eyed, subtle and ingenious people. Talks about their laws, religion, the God of their father. He said the Jews, the people that dwelt there, were of a black complexion. Where did this come out? This was from the 1600s, right? 1670 to be specific. You see this at the bottom, all highlighted. This book was published in 1670. Jews, black complexion. Let's get another witness who says something like that. That says something similar. Let's go to the Roman historian known as Tacitus, right? Publius Cornelius Tacitus, known simply as Tacitus, was a Roman historian and politician. He's greatly regarded as one of the greatest Roman historians by modern scholars. He was born in 56 AD. We're going to go to his book, The Histories of Tacitus. We're going to go to page 399. This what he had to say about the Jews. He says, many assert that the Jews were an Ethiopian race, driven out by fear or hatred to seek a new home in the reign of King Cephas. So he says many assert that the Jews were an Ethiopian race. So he says that. Then this thing in the 1600s says that the people that dwelt in this country were Jews, middle stature, black complexion. This guy, the Jews are composed of 4 separate elements: Asiatic Negroid, Negro in Jamaica. Yeah, you know. So yeah. Anyway, let's continue on. Let's go to page 13. Back to the original book, the Jew, a Negro. We're gonna go down to here. And it says, the original Jews were therefore short, dark people of the long-headed type. Doesn't that sound familiar, what I just used, that 1600 book? Middle stature, black complexion, right? He says, the original Jews were therefore short, dark people of the long-headed type. The original Jew and Negro were then descended from the same father. The evidence of intermarriage you mentioned is a universal phenomenon, and the close affinity between Hamitic and Semitic speech and between the northern Hamitic people and the Semites shows close relationship as you surmise. Right? And let me also get another book where a guy shows an Assyrian relief, which is the capture of the Israelites. And he's going to say that these people in the photo have hair just like Ethiopians. So this is Edward Plumtree. His name was Edward Hayes Plumtree. He was an English divine and scholar born in London. He was born in 1821. We're going to go to his book, Assyrian and Babylonian Inscriptions in Their Bearing of the Old Testament Scriptures. We're going to go to page 448, where he states, it is significant that the captives are for the most part represented as having woolly hair, as though they belong to the Ethiopian army of Turhaka. Right, now he's talking about the Lachish reliefs. For those of you that don't know, he's talking about the Lachish reliefs, the spoil of Lachish, right? Well, what is the Lachish relief? The Lachish relief are a set of Assyrian palace reliefs narrating the story of the Assyrian victory over the kingdom of Judah, which is the southern kingdom of Israel, right? This is the Lachish reliefs, right? We're going to see what they look like. This is what they look close up. This is the Assyrian relief of the Hebrews in captivity. And this is a picture of a mid-century African woman, bronze sculpture. As you can see, the same hair texture, right? Right. This is a Sarson's head of a Moor. This is another black Moor. This is the same hair texture as these Assyrians on the reef. So we go back to this guy who was talking about the Lachish reliefs. He says the captives are for the most part represented as having woolly hair as though they had belonged to the Ethiopian army. So he compared them to Ethiopians, right? So let's continue on to page 14. This highlighted portion. He says, it would be better to say that the Negro descended from the ancient Jewish type or Mediterranean race. It is hardly correct ethnically to reverse the sentence. Yeah, because the word Negro is a relatively modern term, all right? And when we talk about modern, or we talk about known history, so it is more so for him to say that the Negro descended from the ancient Jewish type than vice versa, because Negro is a newer word, right? It's a newer what's the word, category that they put a certain demographic into, right? But yeah, we are people of Judah. But anyway, let's go to another historian, Tudor Parfitt. He was a British historian and writer. He was born in 1944. He specialized in the study of Jewish communities. Tudor Parfitt, he wrote a book called Black Jews in Africa and the Americas. See that? We're just going to read this highlighted portion. He says, a long European tradition maintained that the Jews in general were certainly black metaphorically, in the sense that they were diabolical and evil, as well as black literally. So he says not only were they considered black metaphorically, they were also considered black literally. One Christian critic of the supposed Jewish Pope Anacletus II, elected in 1130, hinted that Jews were generally regarded as dark, when he noted that the Pope was dark and pale, more like a Jew or an Arab than a Christian. Sir William Brereton, 1604, the English parliamentarian, soldier, and writer, happened to visit a Sephardi synagogue in Amsterdam, where he commented that the Jews were very dark-skinned and lascivious. They were most black and insatiably given into women. In his new voyage to Italy, 1714, François Maximilien Mission, 1650 to 1722, the French writer and traveler, confirms that the general supposition was that Jews were black, when he noted that all Jews were black, although only Portuguese Jews started off black. So, you know, and if y'all want to learn more about the Portuguese Jews, I did a video you guys to check out called Portuguese Jews Were Black People Proof. I did it a year ago. I went into a lot of different books on that, and it's a 30-minute video for information on that. But we're moving on back to the book, The Jew and Negro, page 42. He says, the Egyptians held at the time of Herodotus, about 450 BC, that man had been in existence 25,000 years. We are forced to recognize the still remaining strikingly similar racial characteristics of the Jewish and Negro types in their eyes, hair, forehead, thick, sensual lips, and the peculiar formations of their fingernails. And we wonder at the little differences wrought in all those long periods, notwithstanding the migrations of the Hebrew race. Right? So he's once again comparing the types, right? Jew and a Negro. But anyway, we'll continue on. Page 43. He says, let us add to this the still more remarkable claim of some reputable ethnologists that the Eskimo tribes found in North America have many traits in their language, habits, and physical features resembling the Hebrews. And coupled to this statement, the claim of other historians and ethnologists that they were probably a remnant of the 10 lost tribes of Israel. I just wanted to include this basically because I did a video on it that you guys should check out, where another guy in the 1700s, 1775 to be specific, wrote about Native Americans being Israelites in the 1700s. I did this video 13 days ago. Yeah, I just wanted to add that part for that too. So he's saying that about Eskimos. Noting the apparent similarity of these Egyptian inhabitants of Central America, the Toltecs, with their already recognized racial intermixture with the Hebrews, considering the resemblance of the Eskimo mentioned above, when we note the unquestionable Negro features of the Eskimo, we at once have a further proof of the contingent claim by this book. Right? Yeah, I just wanted to show that on that. But anyway, we continue on. Page 55 of this book, The Jew and Negro. He says, Terah, who is mentioned in Genesis as a descendant of Shem and was born in Ur of the Chaldeans, who we have already learned were doubtless Hamitic, and we know from Genesis that the ancestors of Abraham had dwelt for many centuries in the land of the Chaldees. Terah, Abraham's father, had been a worshiper of idols, right? What is more important, the people of Mesopotamia are referred to by Jehovah, which his real name would be Yahawah, as thy brethren, when the call was given to Abraham to get him out of Haran, where his father had died. Right? Abraham's father Abraham's father, Terah, was the son-in-law of Nimrod, according to the Eastern authors. This would give us added proof of the direct descent of Abraham himself from Negro ancestry. Let this fact be further borne in mind. It was in the lower part of the Tigris-Euphrates Valley. The Semitic family mingled with the people already in possession of the soil and formed a mixed people known as the Chaldeans, and it was from the land of Chaldees Abraham was born. So I actually had to look into this Eastern author thing that say that Abraham's father was the son-in-law of Nimrod. I don't know how true that is, but the Chaldeans were black anyway. We could prove that by going to another historian by the name of Godfrey Higgins. He was born in 1772. He was a magistrate, landowner, prominent advocate for social reform. He was a historian and an antiquarian. What is an antiquarian? An antiquarian is a someone who relates to or dealing with antiques or rare books. And he was an historian. We already know a historian is someone who studies and writes about the past and is regarded as an authority on it, right? So we're going to go to his book, which is Anacalypsis, Volume 2 by Godfrey Higgins. We're going to go to page 364, and he's going to say, I admit with great difficulty the theory of all the early astronomical knowledge of the Chaldees have been acquired or invented by his race, and that the Chaldees were originally Negroes, right? And he talks about, then later on he talks about that the Buddhists were Negroes. I actually did 2 videos you can watch called Buddha is Nimrod in the Bible. And then this historian proves that the original Buddha was black. There's an hour video and 32-minute video on that. And I use Godfrey Higgins for that as well as other sources. But notice he says that the Chaldees were originally Negroes, right? Now keep that in mind. The Chaldees were originally Negroes. Keep that in mind. So we're going to go into the scriptures now. We're going to go to Genesis chapter 10, verse 6. Right, we're going to get the sons of Ham. So we have, and the sons of Ham, Cush and Mizraim and Phut and Canaan, right? Through Cush, you get Ethiopia, right? Cush equals Ethiopian / Ethiopia. Cush equals black. The land occupied by the descendants of Cush located around the southern parts of the Nile, Ethiopia, right? Cush, Hitchcock's dictionary, Cush, Cushion, Cushy, Ethiopian, blackness, right? It's synonymous with black. By the way, you had several Israelites named Cush as well. You have, I think it's Psalms, the 7th chapter, or you have a Benjamite whose name was Cush. Yep. And then you have another Israelite named Cush. I believe he was Zephaniah's father. I did a video on it. But anyway, so going back to what I said. So out of the sons of Ham, you get Cush, who is the father of the Ethiopians. And through Cush, you get Nimrod. Right, Genesis 10 and 8. And Cush begat Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. So through Cush, you get Nimrod. And Nimrod is the person who established the Chaldean nation. So let's get into that. It says, in ancient Egyptian inscriptions, Ethiopia is termed Kesh. The Cushites appear to have spread along extensive tracts stretching from the upper Nile to the Euphrates and Tigris. In the early period, there was a stream of migrations of Cushites from Ethiopia, properly so called, through Arabia, Babylonia, and Persia to western India. We on here, it says, Nimrod was a great Cushite chief. He conquered the Akkadians, a Tyrrhenian race already settled in Mesopotamia, and founded his kingdom, the Cushites, mingling with the Akkads, and so forming the Chaldean nation. The Chaldean nation. So through Nimrod, you get the Chaldean nation, right? Now, what did Godfrey Higgins say? The Chaldees were originally Negroes. Who else comes from the Chaldeans? The father of the faith, Abraham. But we'll continue on, right? We're going to go to Genesis chapter 15 to prove that, yes, he comes from the Chaldees. Genesis chapter 15. After these things, the word of the Lord Yahawah came unto Abram in a vision, saying, Fear not, Abram, I am thy shield and thy exceeding great reward. Now, Abram's name was changed to Abraham. We know that through the scriptures. So we'll go to Genesis chapter 15 and verse 7. He says, And he said unto him, I am the Lord Yahawah, that brought thee out of Ur of the Chaldees to give thee this land to inherit it. So Abraham was originally from where? He was from the Chaldees, right? Genesis chapter 11, verse 31. And Terah took Abram his son, and Lot, the son of Haran, his son's son, and Sarai, his daughter-in-law, his son Abram's wife, And they went forth with them from Ur the Chaldees to go into the land of Canaan, and they came unto Haran and dwelt there. We go to Nehemiah 9 and 7. It says, Thou art the Lord, Yahawah the God, who didst choose Abram, and broughtest him forth out of Ur the Chaldees, and gavest him the name Abraham, right? So, clear as day, he's from the Chaldees. You can also learn about that. You can also learn about the, what is it at? Where are we at? This is just talking about how Abraham's father was into idolatry. The father of Abraham served other gods, because he mentioned that earlier in that book, that page earlier. But we go to Judith chapter 5, which you can find in the Apocrypha, which was originally part of the King James Bible 1611 edition. We go to Judith chapter 5. We're just going to go to page 3. We're going to go to verse 3, but 5 is what I want. Verse 3. Judith chapter 5, verse 3. And he said unto them, Tell me now, ye sons of Canaan, who this people is that dwelleth in the hill country, and what are the cities that they inhabit, and what is the multitude of their army, and wherein is their power and strength, and what king is set over them, or captain of their army? And why have they determined not to come and meet me more than all the inhabitants of the west? Then said Hagar, the captain of the sons of Ammon. Check this out. He says, Let my Lord now hear a word from the mouth of thy servant, and I will declare unto thee the truth concerning this people. The people he's talking about are the Israelites, right? He says, Which dwelleth near thee, and inhabiteth the hill countries, and there shall no lie come out of the mouth of thy servants. This is what he says. Verse 6. This people are descended of the Chaldeans. So he says that these people are descended from the Chaldeans. Let's go back to what this historian said. Godfrey Higgins. What did he say? The Chaldees were originally Negroes. So we go back to Judith, the 5th chapter, in the 6th verse. He says the people are descended of the Chaldeans. We know who established the Chaldeans was who? Nimrod, who himself was an Ethiopian. Right? Anyway, continuing on. Judith chapter 5, verse 6 through 10. He breaks it down to history. He goes into the history of the Israelites, where they came from and how they got to where they're at. All right, and where their power was and where their weakness was. We're going to go to Judith chapter 5, verse 6. Again, he says, This people are descended of the Chaldeans, and they sojourned heretofore in Mesopotamia, because they would not follow the gods of their fathers, which were in the land of Chaldea. For they left the way of their ancestors and worshipped the God of heaven, the God whom they knew. So they cast them out of the face of their gods, and they fled into Mesopotamia and sojourned there many days. So they were descended from the Chaldeans. They rejected the pagan gods of the Chaldeans, and they fled into another land, right, and worshiped the God of heaven, whose name is Yahawah, right? But anyway, so with all that being said, I can actually show you guys an image of the Chaldeans, right? So these are Chaldeans close up, right? Now, this hairstyle is still around to this very day, funnily enough, by an Ethiopian tribe known as the Oromo tribe, or the Oromo tribe. I don't know how you pronounce it, but it's spelled O-R-O-M-O, right? And this beard right here looks like this beard this brother has, right? So this is the Oromo hairstyle of an Ethiopian tribe. This is a Chaldean. They still have this hairstyle to this very day. Let me see if I'm still recording. Bet. Right? So, yeah. So let's continue on. We're going to go back to this book, The Jew and Negro. And we're going to go to page 56. This is what he has to say. He says, Abraham had lived in Chaldea. We know that Nitocris and Sesotris, queen and king of Egypt, were Ethiopians. Notice he said the queen and king of Egypt were Ethiopians. Hamitic, and certainly Negroes. And it was when Joseph was ruler under the earlier Pharaoh that he sent for his brethren and settled them in Egypt. This same Ethiopian king, Sesotris, was the greatest of all the Egyptian monarchs, and under him the Jewish population in Egypt had increased until it was more than 3 million of people. Right? We find the direct descendant of this Ethiopian king, a Negro, the daughter of Pharaoh, adopting Moses. And Genesis says he became her son, which would clearly indicate a close social intercourse between the Ethiopians and the Jews. I'll go even further than that. How could she adopt Moses, who was a Hebrew? He was a Levite, to be specific. How could she adopt Moses if she looked like an Ethiopian, like this guy says, well, she was an Egyptian? She was black either way. And how could she adopt Moses and Moses not stick out like a sore thumb unless Moses had the same complexion as the Queen of Egypt? You have to ask yourself these questions. But anyway, he became her son, which could clearly indicate close social intercourse between the Ethiopians and the Jews. Yet, as soon as we find Moses at marriageable age, he fled into the land of the Ethiopian and married Zipporah, a native of Cush. That Zipporah was black is proved by the original Hebrew version of the Bible, where in the part of Jeremiah the prophet is made a claim. Can the Ethiopian change his skin? We find the word Cushite instead of Ethiopian. And in the book of Isaiah, we find Egypt, Patros, and Cush to get joined together. And consequently, Cush is taken for Ethiopia. Right? And yeah, we do know Moses married an Ethiopian woman. Right? So if Moses had kids with an Ethiopian woman, what color would the kids be? First of all, they were both black any damn way. Right? But at the very least, they would look like so-called mixed people, right? But anyway, so now, what I'm gonna do, we're gonna go into the Talmud. I do not believe in the Talmud, but I always use the Talmud as an example to prove what I'm saying, because a lot of people do believe in the Talmud. So this is the Talmud. It's a central text of rabbinic Judaism and the primary source of Jewish religious law and Jewish theology. I asked Google, do most Jews believe the Talmud? It says, according to Maimonides, whose life began almost 100 years after the end of the Gaonic era, all Jewish communities during the Gaonic era formally accepted the Babylonian Talmud as binding upon themselves. Right? So, the Talmud is one of the most important holy books of the Hebrew religion and of the world. So, now we're going to go to a rabbi named Gerald Friedlander, born in 1871. Now, this is funny, because reason I'm going into the Talmud is because I'm going to go to two different rabbis from the Talmud who are going to say that the Hamites, meaning the sons of Ham, are black, right? And for those of you that know, the sons of Ham are what? Mizraim, which is Egypt, Cush, which is Ethiopia. Actually, let's just go back to it real quick. I got it here anyway. Sons of Ham, Cush, Mizraim, Phut, and Canaan. Phut is like your North African Libyans, and Canaan is in southern Africa, right? Well, Canaan was really everywhere, but you know that's a whole nother. I gotta do a video on the Canaanites too, because the Canaanites later on became known as the Phoenicians, the Carthaginians. The Canaanites were in a lot of places. Anyway, so let's go to this Rabbi Gerald Friedlander. Let's see what he says. And Perke the Rabbi Eleazar 24. Chapter 24, he says, Noah brought his sons and his grandsons, and he blessed them with their several settlements, and he gave them an inheritance all the earth. He especially blessed Shem and his sons, making them dark but comely. So he's already telling that the sons of Shem were dark-skinned. He gave them the habitable earth. He blessed Ham and his sons, making them dark like the raven, and he gave them as an inheritance the coast and the sea, and he blessed Japheth and his sons, making them entirely white. So this is according to him. Now me, you already know, and I told you guys a long time ago, the original inhabitants of Europe were dark-skinned people, and that's according to science. Just look up Cheddar Man. Look up Cheddar Man on Google and tell me what you see, right? So they'll tell you yourselves that the original inhabitants of Europe were dark-skinned people. So if you ask me, and I have, and I've done videos on it, all three of the sons of Shem were brown to black, all right? And I got to tell you all the time, who is the so-called white man then? Esau, Edom, right? Among the Edomites, right? At least a lot of them are, because honestly, a lot of people's heritage can go back to a lot of things. For example, somebody could look like he's a so-called black man, but he could be in actuality from Elam. He could be an Elamite or something like that. It all depends on the seed line of the father, according to the scriptures, because it's always been based on the seed line of the father. For example, a Levite comes from what? The sons of Levi. Benjamite comes from what? The sons of Benjamin. If you're a Hamite, you come from what? The sons of Ham. These are all men, right? So therefore, the line comes from the man. But anyway, this guy says he blessed Ham and his sons, making them dark like the raven. dark like the raven. So he says the sons of Ham are dark like the raven. Who is one of the sons of Ham? Mizraim, which would be Egypt, right? That would mean, according to him, Egypt was black, right? And even in the Eastern Bible Dictionary, it says Ham, warm, hot, and hence the south, also an Egyptian word meaning black, right? So it says Ham is an Egyptian word which means black. So Ham is the father of the Egyptians, by the way. So Mizraim, generally given the Hebrews the land of Egypt. Mizraim was one of the sons, right? And Kemet was another word of saying Emmet. Kemet was another way of saying Egypt. The word Kemet in today's written form, Kemet, in the ancient Egyptian language, it translated to mean black, land of the blacks, or black land. Egyptian word for black, Kemet, or black land. And it's funny as hell whenever I read this, because it's like, oh, it's called black land because of their rich soil. No, it's called black land because it had black people in it, right? It's like if the word Ham means black, and Kemet goes back to the word Ham, which means Kamet, which would mean black land, land of the blacks. It's because they were black, all right. But I'll let people marinate in their delusions. But anyway, let's go to another rabbi named Rashi. He was a French rabbi and writer born in 1040 AD. Now he's about to say that the Egyptians were black as well. This is Genesis chapter 12, verse 11. This is his commentary on it. He says, still the real sense of the text this, behold, now the time has come, I am anxious because of thy beauty. I have long known that thou art fair of appearance, but now we are traveling among black and repulsive people, brethren of the Ethiopians, Cushim. So he's saying that the Egyptians were black, but at the same time he's saying that Sarah was fair, right? He's implying that she was white. Once again, I told you guys I don't agree with the Talmud, but the problem with this text is that if the Egyptians were black, why was Moses mistaken for an Egyptian? If the Egyptians were black, why was Joseph mistaken for an Egyptian? Now you got some explaining to do, because clearly that means that they were black also, which, spoiler alert, they were. But anyway, who never even accustomed to seeing a beautiful woman. Yeah, madness. But anyway, Sarah in the Midrash of Agadah, he says, now that we are entering a place of the ugly and black, i.e. Egypt. See that? He's saying it was black. A place of the ugly and black Egypt, right? That Sarah was fair-skinned in the contrast to the Egyptians. See, that's what he's saying. So, ugly and black, i.e. Egypt, ugly and black. Yeah, I already went over that, right? So, here's the problem. Here's the problem with this, to help prove my point. If the ancient Egyptians were black and ugly, and Sarah was fair-skinned, then why is Moses, Joseph, and Paul mistaken for Egyptians in the Bible? That would mean that they had to be black and ugly also. Because when we go to Moses, right? We go to Exodus chapter 2 and 19 is what I want, but we're going to read up further. We're going to go to 16, we're going to read down to 19. So this is Exodus 2 and 16. Now the priests of Midian having had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. And the shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses stood up and helped them and watered their flock. And when they came to Ariel, their father, he said, how is it that ye are come as soon today? And they said, an Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds, and also drew water enough for us and watered the flock. Right? So they mistook Moses for what? An Egyptian, meaning he looks like an Egyptian. Right? Meaning Moses was black. Then we go to Joseph. Same thing happens with Joseph. All in Genesis. Joseph is mistaken for an Egyptian. They just thought he was another Egyptian. You go to Genesis chapter 42 and verse... I'll read it from the top. Genesis chapter 2, verse 42, or verse 3. All right, chapter 42, verse 3. And Joseph's 10 brethren went down to buy corn in Egypt. But Benjamin, Joseph's brother Jacob, sent not with his brethren, for he said, lest peradventure mischief befall him. And the sons of Israel came to buy corn among those that came, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. And Joseph was the governor over the land, and he it was that sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brethren came and bowed down themselves before him with their faces to the earth. And Joseph saw his brethren, and he knew them, and made himself strange unto them, and spake roughly unto them. And he said unto them, Whence come ye? And they said, From the land of Canaan to buy food. Now we go to Genesis 42:8. It says, And Joseph knew his brethren, but they knew not him. Other versions says, And Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. So backstory, Joseph's brothers sold him into slavery to the Egyptians back in the day when he was younger. So they just assumed that Joseph was dead, right? And at the very least, even if they didn't think he was dead, they damn sure didn't think he'd be the governor over Egypt. But nonetheless, we fast forward to this part where the brothers are reunited with Joseph, and they don't even recognize Joseph. They just think he's another Egyptian, which again, according to these rabbis, the Egyptians were ugly and black. So I guess Joseph was ugly and black also, right? So then we go to Paul. Paul is also mistaken for an Egyptian. In the New Testament, we go to Acts chapter 21 and verse 38. But I'm going to start at 37. Acts 21:37. And as Paul was to be led into the castle, he said unto the chief captain, May I speak unto thee? Who said, Canst thou speak Greek? Art not thou that Egyptian, which before these days made us an uproar and led us out into the wilderness 4,000 men that were murderers? So Paul right here is being mistaken for an Egyptian. Watch what Paul says. But Paul said, I am a man which am a Jew of Tarsus, a city in Cilicia, a citizen of no mean city, and I beseech thee, suffer me to speak unto the people. So he corrected him. No, I'm not an Egyptian. I am a Jew. And specifically, Paul comes from the line of Benjamin, one of the sons of Israel. But and also, yeah, we mentioned, because he mentioned Moses married an Ethiopian. I think he mentioned that in the other page. So let's just get that as well. And Miriam and Aaron spake against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman who he had married, for he had married an Ethiopian woman. This is Numbers 12:1. But anyway, let's go to another page, page 57. Author Talmud Abernathy, the Jew, a Negro. He says, we must agree with the deliberate decision of the scriptures as shown by its geographical and political references that Cush, the eldest son of Ham, was the great progenitor of the Ethiopians, and such being a fact as clearly shown, Moses took to wife a woman of Negro blood. The Ethiopians were superior to the Egyptians in a point of antiquity, since Cush, their great ancestor, was the eldest son of Ham, and Diodorus Siculus says that they claim to have been the first nation to have religion established. Homer himself seems to countenance this when he introduces Jupiter, attended by other gods, as present as an anniversary sacrifice or grand entertainment prepared for him by the Ethiopians. The Jews claim Arabians as the descendants of Abraham through Eber, but Herodotus and Xenophon both declare them Ethiopians. So he's saying that people thought the Arabs were Ethiopians, Herodotus and Xenophon, and that is because, that's funny he said that, that is because the original Ishmaelites, they come from so-called black people, because what? Hagar, guess what? Hagar was an Egyptian handmaid. Hagar is the mother of Ishmael, right? The Ishmaelites, right? And if the Egyptians were black, what do you think Ishmael was? So you would say, well, why do the modern day Ishmaelites look the way they look? Well, that's because of the intermixture between a lot of different people, rather it be the Greeks, and also during the when the Turks became, the Caucasian Muslims known as the Turks, they went all throughout the Middle East and they mingled themselves among them. So that's why a lot of people you see today look like Drizzy Drake, who himself is a mixture between a so-called black man and a so-called Caucasian Jewish woman. But nonetheless, where are we at? Herodotus and Xenophon believed them to be Ethiopians. Let me read that again. The Jews claimed Arabians as descendants of Abraham through Eber, but Herodotus and Xenophon both declared them Ethiopians. Pliny asserts that the Ethiopians were masters of Egypt. I think this was supposed to be for here, actually. Yeah, it was. Oh, you know what? This was supposed to be right here. All right, so yeah, we went to the Ethiopian. No, it wasn't. I'm lying. Anyway, back to Numbers 12:1, where Moses married somebody. This once again proves that you are who your father is, because Moses had a son, right? Moses had a son with Zipporah, and he had Gershom, right? Then later on he has Eleazar, and the sons of Levi are Gershom, right? Sons of Moses were Gershom and Eleazar, so they're numbered among the sons of Levi. And the son of Gershom, the son of Moses, was the ruler of the treasury, right? So he was still numbered among the Levites, even though his mother was a non-Israelite, all right? At most, she was either a Midianite or an Ethiopian. Either way, she wasn't an Israelite, and yet she bare the sons of Moses, who were still numbered among the sons of Levi, even to the point where one of Moses' sons became the ruler of the treasury, right? Levi being one of the tribes of Israel, of course. So I just wanted to go into that as well. All right, so page 59. This is about to touch on the Hagar thing I mentioned about the Ishmaelites. The Jew and Negro, page 59. He says, Abraham's intermarriage with Hagar shows an early social, if not physical, and racial relationship between the Negroes and the Jews. For Hagar was an Ethiopian. She was actually an Egyptian, but they were black anyway. And I just read, according to the Talmudic text, they said the Egyptians were black too. So think about that. But anyway, yet she was accepted into the domestic circle with the Jewish wife of Abraham and bore offspring to him, as we are told by the scriptures. We must not forget also that it was by the direct advice of Abraham's wife that this offspring was begotten of Hagar, who, being barren herself, counseled Abraham to beget his long-promised offspring from Hagar. And they both looked to this intercourse to produce the long-expected descendancy assured Abraham. Surely if Abraham had not been himself a Negro, he would not have been so ready to tinge an assured posterity, whose certainty God had pledged in his own good time with the tiniest of Ethiopia. That's because Abraham was a Negro, right? And he went in, and he went into another so-called black woman who was Hagar, all right? And that's how you get the Ishmaelites, right? And let's prove that Hagar was an Egyptian. We'll go to Genesis chapter 16 and verse 1. It says, Now Sarai, Abram's wife, bare him no children, and she had an handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. Genesis 16 and 3. And Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, and Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife. And he went in unto Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. So this is where Ishmael comes from. So, yeah. But I got one more page from this book, and then we got two scriptures to follow it up. So we'll go to page 60, and there's more than this. You know, I just stopped here because I haven't finished reading the book. But we'll go to page 60 of the Jew and Negro. He says, daughter of the priest of On, Potiphar, an Egyptian wife. Yeah, this is talking about Joseph, who also married an Egyptian and had two sons, which are numbered among the 12 tribes of Israel, being Ephraim and Manasseh. It says, from this relationship, two sons were born to Joseph. The reader must not lose sight of the fact elsewhere herein historically proved that it was no less a repugnance to the white races to intermarry with the black races than it was to the blacks to take white consorts, as they considered white people in common with the devil, and thus painted all their symbols of the wicked one. Funny that he mentioned that, because also in ancient India, all their evil deities were also painted so-called white, and that's according to Marco Polo, or the Italian explorer of the 1400s. I think I mentioned that in another video, or was it the 1200s? Or was Marco Polo around? Somebody can put that in the comments. But yeah, he wrote about it when he was traveling to India. But anyway, they consider white people in common with the devil, and thus painted all their symbols of the wicked one. If Joseph had not been of identical or relative color with the Egyptians, he was, it is not probable he would have considered this connection with Potiphar as an honorable or desirable one. However, even admitting this may not have been the case, the intermarriage established a racial relationship beginning at the time. Jacob, Israel, publicly recognized the two sons born to Joseph from his Egyptian wedlock and proclaimed them as his own children, thus conferring on them the right to be known as Israelites. And now thy sons Ephraim and Manasseh, which were born unto thee in the land of Egypt, before I came unto thee into Egypt, are mine as Reuben and Simon. They shall be mine. That's Genesis 48 and 5. They thus became a part of the Israelitish race and founders of the 12 tribes of Israel. So, yeah, Joseph, he got down to the Egyptian woman, and that's how he got two of the sons of Israel, or two of the 12 tribes of Israel to be specific. Read about that in Genesis 41 and 50. And unto Joseph were born two sons before the years of famine came, which Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest, bare unto him. And Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for God said, he hath made me forget about all my toil and all my father's house. And the name of the second called he Ephraim, for God hath caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. Right? And this is talking about the blessing of Ephraim, Manasseh, the sons of Joseph. So, yeah, man. Yeah. You know, something light. This man wrote about the black Jews in the 1800s. And, yeah, that was the video I was working on. And now it's finished. Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. And I want to say once again, peace to the 12. And I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to the Heavenly Father, the Most High Yahawah. In the name of His only begotten Son, yahawashi. Yahawah is the name of the Heavenly Father, who the world commonly calls God. And yahawashi is the Savior of the nation of Israel, who the world commonly calls Jesus Christ. I want to say shalom, which means peace. To you people that are out there listening and learning, to you brothers doing this work, truth and sincerity, and to you elders that's been doing this thing before me, man. I've been talking too much already. So I'm going to go and get up on out of here. Go on, peace. Shalom.